Good afternoon. I'm glad that y'all are fed and ready to hear what I have to say. um, the first thing I want to say, though, is it took me a little while to filter the different layers that I'm approaching this from, because on one side, I'm like, I love museums and I like art, but on the other side, I have been in government agencies that deal with arts and culture, and part of me is kind of broken from seeing the systems that don't work. And I had to kind of find a space for them to kind of meet and find my own way of proposing solutions. So this is what I'm seeing going forward. Let's see. So the rationale, let me read from here. I kind of built a rationale. The National Museum, like many national projects and institutions, tends to be under-resourced and underfunded regularly. This is a problem, I'm not going to harp on it, but because of that, we have to find ways to deal with what needs attention. So I identified 3 points that can be addressed using slightly non-traditional partnerships and collaborations. I say non-traditional because usually you think, okay, there are universities around, you partner with them to do research and those kinds of things. But now we're talking about the digital age. We're talking about technology. We're talking about how expensive those things are. So if we can find ways to partner and collaborate to get technology and digital stuff to work for your institutions that are not resourced well, it's a kind of a win-win. So let me go through the slides and show you what I'm trying to outline. So the areas would be collection, extension, and expansion, visitor research and audience cultivation, digital archiving, and online and new media presence, right? The Trinidad and Tobago government did a new budget for the new fiscal year, and they have a commitment. It hasn't been specified, but they're going to extend the museum. So that's an improvement. But I'm saying that this is actually a really good opportunity to focus on digital strategy for a few reasons. An expanded physical space is going to need not new attractions, but maybe slightly expanded collections and exhibitions. And I think that you could piggyback on that and use and find ways to have virtual and new media extensions within that context. Infrastructural work is also a risk sometimes. The older artifacts, storage and whatever, you lose them or whatever. So you find a way to kind of digitize your catalog and your holdings because you have to, and then you can use them as the digital content as well. And then the traditional museum audience is supposedly the aging or older persons, and you have to find a way to draw a sustained younger audience. And I think that we've been talking about that all morning, the millennials. They're not only using and consuming digital technology, they are creating it. And that is what I'm talking about with non-traditional partnerships. We have to find a way to lean into them creating. And when they create for you, they feel like they are part of what you do. Even if they don't care about museums. Oh, I built an app for the museum. So let's check it out, right? So we need to find ways as well to tap into shared government resources. So while government hasn't been particularly that same priority needs assessment, they've been focusing on ICT and technology development. They've been pumping a lot of money into projects in Trinidad, into education projects, supporting startup and tech projects. And a lot, because of where I worked, I was able to see some of the slippage. I was able to see where people are duplicating funding things. I was able to see where some of the tech projects had dead ends, so that if you spread them and apply them in other government areas that need help, I think we'd have a kind of good way forward. So anyway, Like I say, there is a wide range of supported innovation, technology, and startup projects and competitions. And it leans on that knowledge triangle: innovation, education, research. And I think the museum can lean into that. I have to touch on some global trends. There's a move toward purpose-built mobile technology that promotes visitor interactivity and digital footprints. And I just chose two brief examples that I found in my research. Art Lens. There's Gallery 1 of the Cleveland Museum of Art. It's large. It's a really big, expensive project. It took lots of years. But why I'm listing it here is because it touches some of the key concerns that you will look at when you're building a digital strategy and finding an app or two to work for your space. So for example, the Art Lens app, it's downloaded for free when you before you enter the museum, upon entry, whenever you want to interact and download the app. But it allows you to do a few things. It's like you can log in, you can save favorites, you can save favorite paths along the museum trip. You can recommend them to other people. There's actually a big wall. I don't want to stay too long on this because it's not the main point, but there's a big tech wall, and they have many screens along like this whole wall. Any one of us at any point in time can go, touch the screen, tap the screen, check through our favorites. The favorites then prompt you to things you may not have seen before, and you log that, and it's a big interactive wall. But not only that, what is interesting about that is that you can capture the data. So you can capture what are the best performing exhibits, you can capture the return visits, you can capture if people's favorite patterns have changed by season or by, stuff like that. And then Qsium that was an app that was independently developed in 2015. It's similar, literally Q Museum. And it uses GPS, it logs favorites, and it monitors other behind-the-scenes data so that it could suggest what you want to see and help you map where you want to go in a museum space, right? So that's kind of what the Art Lens interface kind of looks like. And I just took I just looked at one area here. So for example, you scan the item or you go to the area, this pops up. It gives you remote multimedia options to check out in your own time, on the spot, and it probably as well prompts a similar exhibition or exhibit somewhere in the space or outside, right? This is what the Qsium, this is the logo, so you can go look for it on your own. So this is the key thing that sealed this up for me. The checkpoints here. It's easy to use, the technology is easy to use. It's location aware, customizable, multimedia rich, and socially engaging. That is what any digital strategy or any app that anybody is gonna work with needs, right? Because why else spend the money? Right, so I told you all that the government has spent a lot of money on innovation and ICT and technology. This is the program that I've looked at that I'm suggesting the museum kind of collaborate with. The Idea to Innovation program was started in 2012. Basically, it's grant funding for an idea that you think has life, that can have some kind of life. In the very first year, 50 recipients received grants up to a total of 4.7 million TT dollars, right? That's quite a bit of money. Winning innovators and inventors received the funding along those categories here at the bottom. They received the full approved capital, but what I have to say is it's monitored. So the Kariri, there's a government agency called Kariri, and they help with the testing and the piloting and the development of the product. Some of these stipulations are that the project has to happen in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I actually worked in the agency that ran this, so I was able to see things like an increase in the numbers of applicants and types of applications. And after a while, you saw a spike in all of the app development stuff. And what we also saw was that people just wanted to create an app and get the grant funding. They didn't actually have like a full-blown plan for it. And I thought it was kind of wasteful. Okay, so I have a plan for your app. I'm just going to give you a quick idea of some of the projects that pass through the pipeline. The Hollow Class, a virtual environment that can be generated in classroom for subject areas. So it's like immersive technology, sort of. The Breadcrumb mobile app allows businesses to drop breadcrumbs for users to follow and collect free items, like a scavenger hunt. I actually think this one is pretty relevant to museum engagement. Map Ninja, Sightseer, the names are kind of fun too. Tassa mobile app. Tassa is a type of drum that the East Indian culture in Trinidad has, and the app is kind of handy. So you download it for free, you pass through the Diwali exhibition, and you test out your Tassa app. Anyway. So I'm bringing it a little closer now to the actual museum. I chose to focus on the sport gallery for two reasons. Sport is a kind of dynamic area that the history and stuff changes so quickly. This sport gallery has pretty much been the same for many years. Exactly how it is there is how you'd have seen it 10 years ago. There are over 100 items, if you count the photos and all those things. Wall displays of photos, historical information, things on world record holders from the country, title holders, Olympic commemorative posters, Olympic medalists, lists like that, trophies. I listed all those things there. But I avoid this gallery because it's pretty depressing. There isn't very much about the young athletes. And while you have to know about your history, yeah, we're missing, like, there's a big gap from like 2000, and a lot of faces of women athletes are missing from that dialogue too. So I think it's time to fix this one. The focus is also too small. It's like on running, cycling, badminton, things, but we do cricket. There's not enough on the cricket stuff. And it's also I'll go back to this picture. That's what you get. There's no multimedia stuff that works. That is exactly what you get, some faded pictures. So lots of words next to it, faces and outfits that people now can't connect to. Yeah. So here's a closer look at that wall of fame. So it's 7 feet by 18 feet across, that display. And there isn't very much space to add very much. That's part of the problem, right? Outdated info. So there are also 2 of these glass cases, and then there's this wall over here. So my plan is, how do we fix that? So I'm saying that you build a bank of multidisciplinary, just read from here. Make it easier. Right. So I'm saying that you build a bank of multidisciplinary information tidbits on sport. So it's not just the sport history, but you find info on the physics of why cycling, why cyclists don't fall over in the little arena thing. What special material innovations have to do with running suits, spikes, general world records, the history of the Olympics in general. Yeah, sorry, thanks. And I'm saying as well to leverage that same mobile app development program and try and find ways to build branded National Museum apps and code readers, etc. The easiest way, I think, is to start by using the QR code, because it's easy. You can make a little sticker, you could change them up easily, you could kind of place them without changing the original layout too much. And I'm saying as well that we can collaborate with games-based app builders to then make that content interactive. So that same scavenger and trivia hunt thing could mean collecting barcodes. Or when you scan and you get the barcode, there's a question to answer. And then it prompts you to another part of the display or something. And then you also want people to feel like they are part of what's happening. There'll eventually be some space to develop real-time participation. So people like to hear themselves, people like to see themselves, people like to feel like they were part of a moment in history. So I think little prompts like, where were you when Paisley Crawford won the first medal for Trinidad and Tobago? Or where were you when our relay team won gold? Or they want to hear themselves. You could do it by voice noting and make like a kind of a voice note bank for that gathered info. And just really briefly, because I don't have very much time. The art gallery is the other, and the national collection was the other thing that I focused on. And its space is an issue again with this. Over 600 permanent items and holdings, but the physical space is way too small to display more than 100 things at a time. And a lot of the times too, when it's displayed, it's just you walk in and you see the label. You don't know anything else about the artist. You don't know if it was commissioned by somebody important. You don't know the techniques. To me, there's a lot of space to start that kind of dialogue by that same barcoding thing and just other purpose-built apps. I'm not saying that we have to follow the Q Museum or the Art Lens, but those are the starting points for building apps and for guiding that I2I project development. I had to look at limitations, obviously. No ideas without those things. The museum has no Wi-Fi right now. So that's a first start. We can't do anything without that, really. And then you really shouldn't take things wholesale and try to make them work for your space. And yes, everyone has smartphones, but not everybody uses them in the way that we want them to use them. So that's something to consider. All right, what is needed as I'm wrapping up? Dialogue that is driven by the National Museum and Art Gallery to engage potential and current tech developers in these government grant competitions. Using data, you propose sound ways of partnering, because they'll be kind of worried what you're coming for our money and our resources for. And you're going to encourage project development along those areas and allow that testing and pilot phase to work for both parties. Because people might say, this is new technology that hasn't actually been established. Okay, but that's why you're kind of using it for free. So put timelines on it. Understand that you're testing it. Do it by quarter. And figure out, while testing it, what are the things they can get and what are the things you can get. Collection research and building information repositories is part of what we have to do as well. And that estimated timeline is based on my experience with things government. Yes, and quarterly phases kind of give you check-ins where you don't feel so depressed that you're not going anywhere. You don't want long-haul check-ins because it looks like you've done nothing. But you actually have made incremental steps along the way. You could measure stakeholder engagement rates. You could measure your collection and inventory digitization rates, and set goals for those. And you can, first of all, then start a digital footprint. Right now, the National Museum only has a Facebook page as of last month. There's no Twitter, there's no Facebook, there's no Instagram, there's nothing else beyond that. There's a website, but it's not updated. And then you have to leave space for app building and testing, and then obviously the review of the data toward what would be a final version of the app. And I'm closing by saying that whatever we do, whatever digital strategy or collaboration that is happening, has to make sense. It has to be driven by data gathering. It has to have room for multimedia content development on both sides. It has to have room for sharing and social interaction and accessibility. So you don't want an app that you have to pay for. You want it, free. You want it easily profiled. And then you're looking at, we're in the age of, be selfish. Everybody wants something that suits them, right? So you're in an age where you want to really try and make that user experience as personal as possible. But that could only come from ticking some of those boxes, using your data, and really drilling down and finding the apps and the builders that fit what you need. But I'm saying that Trinidad has a ready pool of, I would say they have horses running without the carts right now. So we're tagging on the cart, which is the museum. And I'll just close by saying, museums of the future will engage with their visitors in the museum with the physical spaces. Oh, hold on. Museums of the future will engage with their visitors in the museum with the physical spaces outside of the museum and with virtual audiences they build around specific subjects. That's Paul Rowe was talking about the physical and digital spaces, and there's a whole kind of talk about that. Yeah, and that's me.
Thank you so much, and I think that was a great lead-in from some of the really techie, quite complicated to me stuff that we were inspired by last time to some of the simpler things that we can do. This is the first exhibition that we've had barcodes up for people just to scan for biographies on artists, to start opening up that conversation. And I think you touched really well on the kind of bridge between those two areas, as well as obviously some of the more longer-term development projects. Do we have any questions for Melene? Yep, we have one in the back.
I don't have a question per se. I'd like that you. Oh, sorry.
I'd like that you use QR codes in there because that is something that's been around for a while. But a lot of apps and a lot of technology, it's emerging again, and it's becoming very accessible. Something that's pretty cool to use. And the other thing, Wi-Fi. That is something, when it comes to technology, we've talked about having Snapchat and different things around our museums, but if we don't have Wi-Fi, it's not really, because most people traveling don't have that access to data and different things, so Wi-Fi is important. And the quarterly phases, I like that you put that in there because that is really important in terms of not getting overwhelmed when it comes to how you manage your social media and other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Please. No. Thank you. Well, we can just give Melene another big round of applause.